Hey guys, for my poetry project I decided to pick a poem by one of my favorite contemporary poets, Taylor Mali. He's so contemporary, in fact you could tweet at him if you like. He was a teacher at a private boys school for 9 years in New York, and he dropped it to kind of pursue more his writing. He's part of the slam poetry movement, so he like stands on stage, he reads his poetry for a group of people and they judge him on it. I think it's pretty cool. So you can actually go on YouTube and see him reading all of his poetry, or at least most of it. But he dropped teaching to pursue his little campaign, Teacher Teacher, which is to gain 1,000 people that were, convinced to teach just by his poetry, which I think is pretty cool. I would enter it and say how interested I am in teaching, but I mean, I really wanted to become a teacher much before I read his poetry, but it's just solidified my belief, and so that's why I picked the poem I did. It's called What Teachers Make, and it's kind of taking a jab at the fact that people always say, well, why should you be a teacher? Those who can do, those who can't teach, that sort of thing, and talking about how teachers don't make much, but I find it more of a, not really a moral obligation, but something that I would find joy in, knowing that I'm, educating an entire generation. I just find that utterly amazing. So one thing I really like about Taylor Mali's poetry is that while it doesn't have a specific rhyme scheme or specific meter, it has very good rhythm and words rhyme exactly where I guess you want them to. It's kind of hard to explain. It's just very appealing to the ears to hear, and it's very emotive. Like, you can feel the amount of care he put into each word he chose, and you can feel exactly how strongly he believes every single thing he writes. And I find that just amazing, and something you don't get from every single poet, because you have some people that lock themselves into some format, and it's like very interesting to read and very cool, but you can't feel the extreme depth of emotion that the writer's feeling, and I think that's something that Taylor Mali really brings out very well. Another thing I really like about Taylor Mali's poetry is that he's very free with it, like very open-minded, and I guess kind of, internet-minded, because he posts everything on the internet basically. He has his own YouTube channel where he posts him performing his work. He has his website, taylormali.com, taylormali.com, where he posts all of his poetry. He's even explained about, the one I'm about to read is What Teachers Make, which is actually probably his most prolific poem because it's been passed around, but the problem with that sort of thing is that it's become anonymous. And so he said that it doesn't really matter to him that he's not getting all the credit for it, because for one, if anyone Googles the words to it, it's going to come up Taylor Mali poetry. But for another reason is that he cares the most about the message, which I think is really amazing. And it's something that I'm pretty fond of. I've always been a fan of like free license software and things like that, where it's like more about everyone benefiting from it than saying, oh, I made this, you must pay me so and so much money. But if you want to support him, of course, he has like his books you can buy, he has audio recordings, he's even done voiceover work, which is completely unrelated to his poetry, but I find that pretty cool. I really like his voice, to be honest. He has a very good reading voice. Another thing, if you know me, you'll know I appreciate some great humor, and he is a wonderful humorist. Like, the way he words things, of course, is tends to be pretty funny, but also he has some poems that are just completely made to be comedic, like The Impotence of Proofreading. I won't read it, it's a little vulgar for a school setting, but it's extremely hilarious. And like Lily, like Wilson, is his take on the kind of Valley Girl, like this, like that way of talking, but it's also very meaningful. It talks about how he influences a girl to completely change her mindset, and in a very positive way. And I think that's also really cool how he uses like humor to tie in a deeper meaning, and it's very rewarding to read his poetry, I guess you could say. Okay, so now that I've kind of talked about his writing style and his other poetry, I'll finally get around to the reading of What Teachers Make. It's also called Objection Overruled, or If Things Don't Work Out, You Can Always Go to Law School. I think it's a really good survey of his writing style. It's a good way to introduce you pretty much to what you can expect if you read all his other poetry, because it includes like his emotion, it includes his humor, it includes his witty wording, and it includes his powerful use of language. Like, he can just word things in a way that just sounds good. It's kind of hard to explain. And of course, it's one of his most famous ones that he's read. He gets a little bit more emotional than I do because it touches him more personally. But as I said, this is about me wanting to become a teacher. because this is exactly what I want to do. I want to make kids feel good about what they've done, but also appreciate hard work. I want them to learn exactly what it means to just be. It doesn't have to be a specific subject. Like he's talking about giving them life lessons, not lessons in English and history. And I think that's one of the most important parts of being a teacher. One of my favorite teachers at base school is Mr. Tuart, and he pretty much slips a life lesson into almost every lecture. And some people find it annoying, but I absolutely love hearing his take on it because, I mean, history is not my favorite subject, but when he can relate like Reconstruction era America to my personal life, that's when I start to really care about what I'm hearing in school. And so I love when teachers do that. And that's why I usually like English class, because that's what literature is about, really. Okay, one last thing before I actually begin the reading is that since it's very emotional, it has some language that some people may not agree with. I'm pretty sure that since you guys are, in 11th grade and you've gone to public high school for a while, you've probably heard these words and seen the gesture before, but, I figured I'd just give you a bit of a heads up since you might not expect that in a formal project to a teacher. But I would just like to note that, yes, I did get this previously approved with Miss Hatchett, because she also said that the impotence of proofreading wasn't quite appropriate for school. So if you think this is offensive, you might not like that poem that much. What Teachers Make, or Objection Overruled, or If Things Don't Work Out, You Can Always Go to Law School by Taylor Molly. He says the problem with teachers is, what's a kid gonna learn from someone who decided his best option in life was to become a teacher? He reminds the other dinner guests that it's true what they say about teachers. Those who can, do. Those who can't, teach. I decide to bite my tongue instead of his and resist the temptation to remind the other dinner guests that it's also true what they say about lawyers, because we're eating, after all, and this is polite company. I mean, you're a teacher, Taylor, he says. Be honest. What do you make? And I wish he hadn't done that. Ask me to be honest, because you see, I have this policy about honesty and ass-kicking that if you ask for it, I have to give it to you. You want to know what I make? I make kids work harder than they ever thought they could. I can make a C+ feel like a Congressional Medal of Honor and an A- feel like a slap in the face. How dare you waste my time with anything less than your very best. I make kids sit through 40 minutes of study hall in absolute silence. No, you may not work in groups. No, you may not ask a question. Why won't I let you get a drink of water? Because you're not thirsty, you're bored. That's why. I make parents tremble in fear when I call home. I hope I haven't called at a bad time. I just wanted to talk to you about something Billy said today. Billy said, leave the kid alone. I still cry sometimes, don't you? And it was the noblest act of courage I have ever seen. I make parents see their children for who they really are and what they can be. You want to know what I make? I make kids wonder. I make them question. I make them criticize. I make them apologize and mean it. I make them read, and then I make them write. I make them spell definitely beautiful, over and over and over again until they will never misspell either one of those words again. I make them show all their work in math, and I make them hide it in their final drafts in English. I make them understand that if you've got this, then you follow this, and if anyone ever tries to judge you by what you make, you give them this. Let me break it down for you so you know what I say is true. I make a goddamn difference. What about you?